control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. All right, everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. It's our Wednesday 2-hour fun fest, and nothing spells fun more than the Paranormal Portal, if you can spell it. How you guys doing? Thank you so much for being here with us. We are got a really special show lined up for tonight. Hopefully it'll be amazing. I'm pretty sure it will be because I was on these gentlemen's show just a couple weeks ago or a week ago and had an amazing time, amazing conversation. So I'm looking forward to reversing the roles and putting them in the spotlight, in the hot seat, if you will. So, of course, Don is here with me tonight. So without further ado, let me introduce Don.
Hola, peeps. Hello.
Hello. How you doing, brother?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Sore, but doing good. This snow sucks.
There wasn't much, though. We just got dustings.
Yeah, you got dustings. I live 12 miles north.
Did you really get that much different?
Yeah, I got enough. I had to actually go out and shovel the snow.
Oh, okay. I could have taken my leaf blower out to my walk. It was.
Oh, you take my leaf blower out there.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to hate, but no, just saying. I feel, you could share a little bit of my joy.
Oh, I do.
Feel good for me, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to hear that. But ladies and gentlemen, without further pause or delay, we are going to be joined tonight by the gentleman Shane Groves and the Judge from the Shadows podcast. And they are with us tonight, and we're going to dive into all their experiences, kind of get their feeling on a bunch of this paranormal stuff that's going on. Going to get personal. So we're going to put the squeeze on them in just a couple seconds here, but I hope you're ready because it's going to be epic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we are fully underway here on the show, and I haven't tried to connect the phones yet. I meant to do that before the show, but I got to talking to the guys, and next thing I know, it's showtime. So we'll try to connect them later. If you guys want to call in and be a part of the conversation, we can certainly do that. We got 2 hours, so we're going to use all of it. And without further ado, again, I suppose I should introduce our guest tonight. On the right-hand side is Shane Groves. On the left-hand side is the Judge. These gentlemen are the heartbeat of From the Shadows podcast. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's way past my bedtime, but hey,
I'm a night owl. I'm just getting loose.
Yeah, me too, man. This is my time to shine, and I really appreciate you guys coming on. Now, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I guess, I was on your show, and we had a great time, and special thank you for that. That was probably, I've been on a lot of shows, and I really, really had a good time talking with you guys. I noticed that you guys really have a very similar approach as we do here on the Portal. Just have discussions, have a dialogue with somebody. You know, a lot of people out there, and this isn't a criticism, but they treat it
Right.
like a laundry list. Yeah. They get the questions all lined up, and then there's this programmed conversation, which is very sterile and it's very in the can. But I really had a lot of fun with you guys. And can you let people know how long you guys been doing this, first of all?
What, not preparing and just going off the cuff?
We've been
We've
doing
done
it
it
all
all
life.
yeah.
Perfect.
That's how he failed math in high school.
Among other things.
Well, how long has From the Shadows podcast been around?
I think our first episode was probably in August of 2019.
Oh, cool.
You know, and like the planning that goes into it is months and months prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when we officially launched, was August of 2019.
Yeah, I refer to him as Grover. But Grover and I have been lifelong friends. We played high school sports together. And so we've kind of been having this dialogue for years. And then, one day I remember I was driving into the courthouse and we were talking and we were working on movie scripts and different things like that. And I said, you know what, we should start a podcast. And that sort of seed got planted, and neither he nor I are technical guys at all. And we just sort of Forrest Gumped our way into finding Jason, the super producer, who had actually done podcasts before.
Yeah, he had actually, yeah.
And the thing grew, and that's how we got started. But, we're not trained radio personalities. So
We have faces for radio. Well,
Yeah.
faces for radio.
Yeah.
But
So so we started our first guest, I think it was Dr. Foster,
Dr.
and so it was just a real organic thing, and it was funny because she was like doing household chores, and then she got in her car and was driving.
We're like, this is podcast?
This is podcast, and she's driving, going, zooming down the highway, and so that's kind of how the whole interview type process worked. It was real organic and kind of. We like to describe it as we're going down the road and we might take a left turn down an alley and go this way, and then we'll eventually get back to the subject matter. But we like to have a good time when we're doing it, and so far it's been a blast. And then getting to interview some really great people with some really great experiences and some of the big names in the cryptozoology world,
Like Brent Thomas.
like Brent Thomas.
You guys, how you do go on?
Oh, stop. You're starting to blush.
No, it's really cool though. I think I really enjoy your guys' format, and ladies and gentlemen, to any of you out there listening, if you haven't checked out From the Shadows podcast, definitely do that. If you like the Paranormal Portal, you're gonna like what they're doing, maybe even more. They just got a real cool formula, real cool personalities, as you can tell, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. But how did you guys decide on the paranormal? Has this always been a passion for both of you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is it actually starts with my dad was the seventh son of a seventh son.
Oh.
And so.
Which kind of competed with, what was that, Disney, Six Brides for Seven?
Oh,
or whatever.
jeez.
So it wasn't,
Yeah,
it wasn't quite as
so it's really weird. So I grew up in a family where the supernatural and the paranormal were something that was always sort of on the fringe, and people talked about, and real creepy stories and things like that. And my dad, didn't really like to talk about it too much, but when he was 12 years old, he started seeing things like the gift of whatever, some sort of sight, like a third eye. And ironically, maybe not ironically, that's probably the wrong word, but interestingly, when I was 12 years old, then I started seeing things. So it's just kind of weird that that age 12, I don't know if it's just coincidence or what.
Put it this way, the judge's house was the one house that you did not want to accept an invitation to spend the night at as a kid.
Grew up in a haunted house.
Wow.
Just crazy, bizarre stuff happened. And so it was just always, the paranormal was always there.
Sure.
But although the paranormal was sort of always there, my real passion was, and it was cryptozoology, but I don't really think they called it cryptozoology back then. You know what I mean? That was just, I don't know when somebody actually came up with that term, but that was really my real passion. Grover would tell you the same thing. When we were in elementary school, you get those scholastic books. They'd send those, the pamphlets they would send home with you where you could order books.
Mm-hmm.
And we would always look for, both he and I, even though we didn't know that, we would look for the books on the supernatural, the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, werewolves, all those sea monsters. Those were the things that fascinated me. Because when you grow up and I know this sounds funny, but when you grow up in a haunted house, the sort of the whole paranormal ghostly thing becomes old hat. It just becomes.
So you need another level of
I had to amp
scare.
it up.
So
Bigfoot,
Berry Triangle,
I grew up in that, and so you just become sort of accustomed to things going bump in the night and hearing things and seeing things. Like the house we lived in, mundane things would disappear. Your hairbrush, the TV remote control, anything that you would use kind of on a daily basis, it just disappeared and you couldn't find it. And you'd look the house, you'd ask, you couldn't find it. And it'd take about a week, and about a week later, you go down into the basement, and all the items that had went missing that week would be in a little pile in the center of the room.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And you'd be like, oh my gosh. And so my mom finally, and I was a kid, so I don't know all the details about it, but my mom finally brought in some lady who was a self-proclaimed spiritualist. Okay.
Oh, sure.
We didn't tell her anything about the house because, we didn't, my mom was smart enough. Hey, look, I'm not going to tell, kind of like going into a palm reader and telling them your life story and then say, okay, now tell me what my future holds.
Sure.
And so, we didn't tell the lady anything. And she came in the house and she went all over the house and she sat down with it and said, look, I can't tell you for sure what's in your house, but I can tell you that the power source of what is in this house is coming from the basement. Oh. And we had never told her anything about that. And so, we knew it was there. I mean, just crazy stuff. Like, and the thing about it is, if you ever got the first time you spent the night at our house, so if you were a first-time guest and you were going to actually spend the night in the house, you were 100% guaranteed that something crazy was going to happen. It was like you got baptized. If you spent the night and you'd never spent the night before, and I got a laundry list of friends that that they would attest to it, and weird stuff. Like my older brother, who's also a judge, by the way, he had a friend that was going to come over and spend the night. Kid was from Crestline and stuff like that. And so he comes over and we start telling him, hey, look, the house is haunted. This stuff's going to happen. Just prepare him. And he's, he thinks we're gagging him, we're pulling his leg. So we're sitting in the TV room, we're telling the story, and all of a sudden, it sounds like a wild bull is in the basement, just breaking everything. Now, there's no sounds like, screaming or anything, but it just sounds like somebody is breaking every single thing in the basement. Glass, boxes. I mean, just tearing the place to shreds.
Right.
And I look over at this guy, and he looks at my brother with kind of like a half smile, like, are you guys setting all this up? But then when you realize these guys ain't setting this up, there's really all hell's breaking loose into this basement. We instantly went from three sitting on different spots, all three of us sitting on the same couch, looking at each other. And this went on for like 5 minutes.
For the rest of your lives?
Oh, yeah. But it went on for like 5 minutes. And I'm telling you what, you want to talk about just scared. He refused to spend the night. He said, no, screw you guys, I'm not spending the night. No, that was it. And so none of us had the guts to go down to the basement to see what had happened. Right. So my parents, they were big at going to like social clubs like VFWs and AMVETs and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so they were out and they came home and, there's me and my brother and we tell them what happened. So my dad's like, okay, let's go down in the basement and check it out. And so, behind the old man, we go down there and there's not a single thing out of place. Not a single thing out of place. And I think most parents would think we just made the whole thing up, but it was so commonplace that weird supernatural stuff would happen. They're like, oh yeah, I guess here we go again.
It did. And, I mean, your dad admitted later on that he actually had seen.
Oh,
what
yeah.
What was the thing he told about going out to the barn and seeing, like a different time going on?
Yeah.
Like,
So
kind of like a time slip, like
yeah,
you talked about.
So my
Sure.
dad had an interesting take on stuff.
Mhm.
My dad wasn't 100% convinced that these were ghosts.
Okay.
Because he had went out to the barn.
Was he a kid? Was he a kid?
He was a kid. He was a kid. But interestingly, he grew up literally a quarter mile from where our house was, or no, about half mile.
Yeah, it wasn't very far.
But when he was a kid, he went out to the barn because he grew up on the farm too, and he saw people like dressed in clothes from like the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
And they were just going about their day. They were just doing things like mundane tasks. They were just going about their day. And he sat there. At first, it scared him. Then he sat there and he watched, and he realized they couldn't see him. Like they were just going about their life. There was
Wow.
Like he was peeking in on
Right.
an event that happened.
Right. Yeah.
however
Like
many years.
and so he began to believe that what we were experiencing was, I guess, what we would call is like a time slip. Like
Sure.
like he was seeing through a veil
Right.
into another time. That that time is not time's not linear. It doesn't run in a straight line. That time's a flat circle. And so therefore he was actually looking into another time period, and that he thought that like because we would see apparitions in our house all the time. Like you'd be sitting in watching TV and you'd see somebody just walk right by the door.
Wow.
I mean, just full person walk by the door, and you'd look at I'd look at my my dad. He'd look at me, and we'd like, "Do you see that?" And you're like, "Yeah, okay, finish watching the show." I mean, it happened so
It was
much.
70s and 80s. I mean, come on, it was more
I mean,
relaxed.
literally, it happened so much that, like today, on some paranormal show on, the Travel Channel, this would be just earth-shattering stuff.
Right.
It just happened all the time. I mean, it just literally happened all the time.
Wow.
And so for us, you're not scared anymore because it just happened so much. So my dad was convinced that what we were seeing weren't ghosts, that we were seeing through some sort of time portal or something like that. Now, I obviously that doesn't account for some of the crazy stuff that happened. Like I had a basketball court in my hayloft of our barn, and so my friend, who is part of the dog man story you'll hear a little bit later.
Okay.
He was going to come down and we were going to play dunk ball because we had a basketball court in the hayloft. We had the rim blower,
Sure.
And so, if anybody out there has ever played basketball in a hayloft, it's 110 degrees.
Yeah, and for all the city kids that are watching, yes, us country kids did play basketball in the barn.
Yeah.
And up on the hay.
Yeah, would fall out the door. It's about a 15-foot drop.
You had to dribble around holes.
Yeah, it was quite an adventure.
Traveling could
So-
kill you.
Yeah. So my buddy was supposed to come down, and we were going to play some dunk ball. And I walk out to the barn, and I hear him up there dribbling around. The ball's dribbling, and we had a metal. Some of these. We'll date ourselves, but we had one of those chain nets. You guys know what the chain net is on a
sure.
basketball hoop?
Yep.
So, and they put them in the big cities so the kids wouldn't cut the nets down because they're chained, right?
Right.
Nobody does it anymore because somebody got their finger caught in it, ripped their finger completely off. So there was lawsuits and stuff like that.
Sure.
So you're not going to find chain nets anymore.
But it made a great sound.
But it made a great sound. So if you would swish it through that chain net, it'd make just the most perfect sound, right?
Right.
So I'm going out to the barn, and I get to, and you had to climb up this ladder to get up in there, and I hear him dribbling around, and I hear him swishing these shots, which is strange because he was a terrible shooter.
He's a terrible shot. So.
Yeah, he's a terrible shot. I'm like, what the heck is he up there stroking these shots? And then you heard it like the ball hit the backboard and somebody just dribbling around shooting.
Wow.
So I yelled up at him. I said, hey, did you bring any water? Because we would just, back then I had sulfur water. So you didn't want to get water out of the pump out there by the barn. So you would bring a jug of water. Bring a jug of water. And I yelled up there and said, "Hey, did you bring any water?" And he didn't answer me. He just kept shooting and dribbling around. I said, "Hey, a-hole, or did you bring any water?" Well, he doesn't answer me. So fine, I'm a kid. So I climb up the ladder and I get there. I peek my head up and I look, and there's the basketball laying in the middle of the floor.
Wow.
Now, it's a big barn. So I think he's hiding up there, going to jump out and scare me. So I get up, I say, "Hey, come out. What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah." So then I open the sliding door, because we had one of those doors that you use for the barn where you send the hay up.
Sure.
Okay. So I slide the door open, let all the sunshine in, and I'm standing there and I look down the road and I see him coming. He hadn't even made it there yet. So something was up there shooting. Let me tell you how quickly I scaled down that ladder. I almost went head first.
Fireman pole.
Yeah, I needed a fireman's pole right out of Ghostbusters.
That's really awesome.
But that kind of stuff happened, and it happened a lot. And so, like I said, as a kid, you just kind of, it was almost like, not everybody has a haunted house? You know what I mean? It's like one of those things.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. And so, I could sit here and give you 2 hours of those stories, but they're not nearly as interesting as what transpired later in life.
Well, I've got to say, though, that when you were talking about your father seeing them in period clothing and having that moment and you'd see apparitions walking through the house all the time, I was thinking, maybe there's something geologically about that land that, for whatever reason, the veil is thinner between the realities.
It's interesting that you point that out, and you may be perceptive because you're a paranormal podcast host.
Right.
But when we started how we really started the podcast is the experience, the story that he's going to tell about the dog man happened when we were in high school. And, there was no, and when we get into it, there was no like frame of reference or anything for what it was he experienced. But it's been a couple years now when he finally put everything together and realized, oh, man, this is what I saw. Okay. Then it became, he started reaching out and talking to other people who he felt had the same kind of experiences. And he got on a couple podcasts. And at that point, I hadn't even listened to a podcast. And he shared his experience with, who was the first person?
The late, great Brenton Saw Wayne.
Oh, okay. Brenton, sure.
So he was on that. He was on his, and then he got on Shannon LeGros and told the story. And he was like, man, it was so great telling the story. And people reached out to him through Shannon. And one of the people that reached out to him was somebody that lived less than a mile away from where his experience took place.
Yep.
Because this where we're sitting right now, where we're at, where we live, where we work, now we've left at various times of our lives, but we've ended up back here. So we've always lived in the area. Our families have always lived in the area. And this lady reached out to him about, not necessarily that she had a dogman experience, but that she had an experience at around the same time that was so odd and strange that she didn't know if they were connected. Right. And so we started talking, and it's like, man, that's weird. Maybe something's, maybe there is something going on.
We started talking to other people, and what we found is in this little geographical area, it is a hotbed for paranormal activity.
Right.
And we can share some of the stuff from other guests that have come on. And we're talking about in a 1 by 1 mile square.
Because where talking about his house, where he grew up, is within a mile of the experience of the dog man led to his, was leading to his house.
Yep.
And so being in this small community that we've always been in and are familiar with everybody, we're 2 episodes into the podcast and you know how, I mean, well, maybe you guys don't, but for us starting out, it's hard to get it out there, and local people were the first ones to start listening. And people who, then he built a house out in the country, not far from where he grew
Oh,
up.
I built a house foolishly.
Yes. Okay.
Built a house within 2 miles
Okay.
of
So-
where it's not even 2 miles. If you, as the crow flies, probably 3/4 of a mile
Wow.
Yeah.
from where the dog man was, and I'll tell that story
Yeah.
because it is nuts.
So our basically third, I had somebody approach me who knew we were doing this, and it happened to be a kid that grew up on the mile stretch of road that I grew up on. We were the only two houses. He was a younger kid than me, and he said, "Hey, you guys, I listened to the first couple episodes." He goes, "You guys want to talk? Do any ghost stories?" I'm like, "Well, of course we want to do some ghost stories, especially something in the area."
Right.
So he starts telling me the stuff that's going on in the house that him and his wife had lived in for 8 years. I'm like, well, where is that?
Yeah, where's this house at?
It was at the corner of the road between his new house that he built and the house that he grew up in, and the next road over from the dog. And we're like, what is going on in this area?
Yeah, we talked about taking a map and start putting pins in
Right.
where all this different paranormal stuff had happened.
Then we just decided against it because we wouldn't want to drive around.
We want to drive around, knock on people's door, and say, "Hey, have you experienced any paranormal stuff?"
But those people's haunted house story, I mean, it was like, it took
Right
three,
there.
It took 3 episodes.
Yeah, and just
It was so
right
long.
there.
So and that's where we kind of were like, okay, maybe just like you said, Brent, maybe there's something,
Geological.
and then that took us back to when we talked to Linda Gottfried on the show,
Yeah.
and she kind of threw out the whole Indian burial mound.
So, now might be a good time to break
Yeah,
into the dog.
yeah, go,
story.
yeah,
So-
go ahead.
Sure.
So I grew up in this house about, for anybody that's Ohio listeners or anything like that, I grew up in a house about 5 miles out of a little town called Bucyrus on State Route 4. Now, people in Ohio know State Route 4 because it runs north and south, and it runs you to Lake Erie or Cedar Point. So if you want to go to Lake Erie or you want to go to Cedar Point, one of the world famous amusement parks, you got to drive through Bucyrus, and you had to drive by my house, which really sucked as a kid because the traffic on Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights was just awful.
Sure.
And Route 4 is a 2-lane road. It's not a 4-lane highway or anything like that. 2-lane road.
They should be 4 lanes.
This should be 4-lane. Dangerous. I mean, it's hard to pass. There's tons of semis. So as a kid, my mom wouldn't even let me go get the mail from the mailbox until I was like 10, 11 years old. Because our mailbox was so close to the road that literally if a semi went by, it would suck the mail right out of your hand and right under the truck. It's crazy. So I was about 15 years old, and an adult friend of the family's convinced me that, that I should get in shape for basketball and stuff like that. And he was going to train me to run a 10K, which is 6.2 miles. And that because we had a big festival in Bucyrus every year called the Bratwurst Festival. People come from all over the country for it. And so we claim to be the bratwurst capital of the United States, although there's probably some people in Wisconsin that would argue with us about that.
Nothing better than Americans arguing over sausage.
Yes, over sausage. But anyway, so this festival, the festival was the third weekend in August, right? Always the third. So it's always the third weekend in August. So I started training for this 10K. And the guy training me had a regimen for me, how many miles I had to run each day and stuff like that. Well, there was a stretch. So we're talking about first week of August, second week of August, somewhere in there. It was hot. I mean, it was really, really hot. It was 100 degrees 3 days in a row. And I was supposed to run 5 miles. And I'm like, man, it's so hot. I don't want to go out in the heat. So the guy tells me, well, listen, why don't you get up early in the morning and get out there and run before the sun gets hot? I am a horrible morning person. I'm a night owl. When I was a kid growing up in that house, there was no cable TV, but there was a show called 8 All Night. And it was the only station that stayed up past midnight. Remember, as kid, man,
Sure.
any of you younger listeners are going to be shocked when you hear this.
You mean you couldn't watch TV all night?
No, TV quit at midnight, and they would play the national. Yeah, the national anthem would come on, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the national anthem was over, and the stroke of midnight, bang! It was nothing but white noise.
Yeah.
But Channel 8 would stay up all night, and they would show monster movies. So it's summer. I love staying up watching monster movies, and the funny thing is, we still had a party line at that time. So for those of you who were listening,
And it's not like party line.
yeah,
No, it's
a party line was you had a landline and you would pick it up, and there were other people that shared your line. So
I feel like we're doing that show of Wes's with the Billy the Kid. We're going back in history,
Yeah.
like talking about.
So you'd pick up the phone and there'd be people talking. You'd be like, okay. You'd put the phone down. You'd have to wait till they were done talking.
You're
Well,
still on the line.
yeah, still in line.
You're
Well, I
still-
became sort of a seasoned eavesdropper. You know what I mean? I got really good at holding down on the button and lifting real slowly so I could hear all the gossip that was going on. So, we had a party line and stuff. And I was just like, I would stay up all night talking to our other buddy who works for me now. He's my bailiff. And we would talk all night and watch monster movies. Because it was the only time my mom would let me sit on the phone because she'd like, get off that phone, other people want to use it, because neighbors.
Are we going to get to the dog man?
Yeah,
show?
so
Okay.
we got 2 hours. I guess.
We got all kinds of time.
We don't have to fill it right now.
All right. So I say, screw this. I'm not getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and going out and running 5 miles. Forget that. So I just decided I'm going to do it at night. I'm going to wait till the sun goes down. It's dark, and I'm going to go out and run. I'm not scared of the dark. I grew up in the country. I mean, we played hide and go seek
In a haunted house.
In a
You're not
haunted house.
scared
Yeah,
of
what
it.
am I scared of? So no, I wasn't worried at all. So the course that I ran was, where my house was on Route 4, I would leave my house, get in the ditch, go south about 100 yards, maybe if that, maybe not even 100 yards.
I don't know, dude. From that stop sign, it looks like it's a mile.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe 150
The
yards,
older
200 yards.
The older we get, the longer that
So
distance looks.
so I'd head south, and then I would turn, which would be west on a little side road called Temple Road, and it was a 1.5 lane road. There wasn't even any like yellow line painted down the middle. It's so small, and that was 2.5 miles out to State Route 90.
No, 19.
19. Why did I always screw that up?
I don't know.
It's in my head. So to State Route 19 was 2.5 miles, and back there's my 5 miles. Easy peasy, right? So it's dark. There's no full moon. There's no full moon out, but you could see that there was a lot of visibility. There's no wind blowing. It was still hot, but it was okay. And so I take off running, and I get to the first crossroad. The first crossroad is a little road called Flickinger Road. And to understand that night, as I'm running west, there's corn, a full cornfield on my right and a full bean field on my left. Okay. The corn is about head high, right? And I was 5'11", almost 6 foot, and it was right at the top of my head. So I get down past Flickinger Road, past Eaton Road, get to 19, turn around, come back, and things are going okay. And now I get back to Flickinger Road, and I'm on my way back. And on the way back, where Flickinger Road is, okay, there's a woods on one side of the road, and on the other side of the road picks up the corn. And that corn would run all the way to Route 4. And it's a mile, because the crossroad's a mile. So it's 1 mile from Flickinger Road to State Route 4. And when I got to the wooded part, it was, and I call it my spider sense. And growing up in, a haunted house, you'd get chills and stuff. And I even to this day, if I walk into a place where there's some sort of paranormal activity, I'll get these chills that break out on the back of my neck, go up my scalp. It's weird. And so my spider senses go off, and I'm like, whoa, this is weird. And it bothered me so much that I actually stopped. And I started looking at the woods like there was something in the woods. Like I just felt like there was something in there. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And so I stood there for just a little while, staring, and nothing. And then I look, and across the road, in the corn, about 3 to 4 to 5 rows in, something is moving, and it's something big. Now, my gut when it first happened was it's deer, because we're in Northwest Ohio.
Sure. The
deer population is huge here, huge. So I just assumed it was a deer, and I thought, okay. And then it stopped. The weird thing was, if you come across a deer, it'll look at you and it'll just take off running.
Yep.
But this thing didn't take off running. It stopped, and the corn became perfectly still.
No. Oh no.
And so I thought that's a little strange. So I stood there and looking at it. My spider senses didn't go away, which was weird. I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get the heck out of here.
Right.
So I start running, and as I start running, the thing in the corn starts running with me.
Oh no, that's horrible.
And here's the weird thing: it's keeping perfect pace. Like when I say perfect pace, it is perfectly lined up with me. It's not a couple steps behind me. It's not a couple steps ahead of me. It's running like foot for foot, pace for pace. And I thought, wait a minute. This ain't a deer. Right. Deer's not going to run with me. It's going to run away from me.
Sure.
So I stop. And when I stop, the thing in the corn stops. Oh. And I mean, it stops instantly, which was weird because how did it see me?
Right.
It's 4 or 5 rows in, and I can't see it. Okay. How the heck is it seeing me? How did it know that I stopped? And so you start thinking, okay, this isn't a dog. This isn't a coyote. It's big. I mean, it's big. When it moves, I mean, you had to see how much corn moved when it moved.
So it was really big.
Now, yeah, really. Now, for those of you who've never been in a cornfield, those rows are really tight, okay? And for a grown person to try to run through a corn row, first of all, if you've never done it before, you will find out those corn stalks will rip the crap out of you.
Yeah, like razor
leaves. You try to run through there,
those corn, the leaves are like...
The leaves are, they'll cut you. They're
yeah.
like knives.
Yep.
And so, as I'm sitting there going, what is in this corn? And I thought, could this be a person? Now, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's no houses near me. And now it's probably 10:30 at night, okay? And I'm sitting there thinking, what would be the odds that some person would just happen to be out in the country, see me, jump in the cornfield, keep perfect pace with me, not scream out from getting cut in the corn? And I'm scared. And I was in good shape, and I'm running pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And whoever's in this cornfield is keeping up with me perfectly. So I rule out all the person, the deer, the dog, the coyote. We do not have wolves. We do not have bears where we're from.
We didn't even have coyotes.
We didn't really have a coyote population back then.
Sure.
No. So I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to beat feet and get the heck out of here. I'm just going to take off. So I just take off sprinting. And when I take off, gentlemen, and this is no exaggeration, the moment I took off, the thing in the corn takes off with me. Same time.
Oh.
And as fast as I ran, this thing stayed with me perfectly. I couldn't shake it. No way.
No.
So then I come to an abrupt stop again, and it comes to an abrupt stop again. It doesn't run a couple feet past me and double back.
Right.
It stops perfectly when I stop. So then I start panicking, because now I know whatever's in the corn is a lot faster than me, because I was running guts out, and I couldn't shake it. And it just stayed pace with me, like it was toying with me. So I knew there was an old farmhouse was going to be up on my right. Now keep this in mind. On my way back, the corn is to my left. So I know at the half-mile mark, the half-mile to get back to Route 4, on my right is an old farmhouse. And they had this big giant tree that was out by the front, by the road. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get to that tree, and I'm going to climb that tree as high as I can and I'm just going to wait there until somebody comes and rescues me. If I have to spend the night in that tree, I'll spend the night in the tree for all I care. But
And I might add, that's the craziest part of the story.
hey, I'm going to tell you what, you be out there.
Yeah.
So
You climbing a tree.
as a country boy, I could climb a tree. So I take off jogging, not fast. I just take off jogging, and it takes off with me, same pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm getting closer to that house, I start picking up the pace. It starts picking up the pace. So it knows it can, I don't know how it knows how fast I'm running, but it does. And it stays with me. And as I'm thinking, okay, sucker, I'm going to get to this tree and I'm going to scale it and I'm going to have the high ground and maybe I'll be able to see what you look like. You know, I'm sitting thinking I'm safe. Well, much to my sorrow, somebody had came and dehorned the damn tree. They'd skinned it.
Oh no.
So I get to the tree and I'm like, I'm not climbing the tree. So I stop again. And of course, it stops. And now I know I'm in trouble.
Wow.
I know I'm in trouble. Because whatever this thing is, it's not human. It's not a typical animal. And it's toying with me. It's just toying with me. So now once I got past that house, then it was straight soybeans on the right, corn on the left. Okay? So I'm thinking, okay, my buddy who was supposed to come down and play basketball with me in the hayloft, he lived to the right. So I thought maybe I'll just cut right across this soybean field and just take a shortcut to his house. But if you know anything about how soybeans are and how they're planted, and at that time of the year, there's just no way you could cut across them because they would tangle your feet and trip you. You couldn't do it. And part of it was, I thought, this thing's a lot faster than me, but if I try to cut across the soybean field and it comes after me, there's a 0% chance I'm going to be able to juke it.
Yeah.
You remember when you're a kid on the playground or in gym class when you play tag?
Sure.
And there was always that kid that was a lot faster than everybody. So you knew you couldn't outrun him. So you didn't try to outrun him. You just tried to kind of juke him. And as he ran at you, you kind of arched your back and he'd swipe at you and miss. Mm-hmm. Part of me thought, as long as I'm on concrete, I'll be able to juke. I'll be able to kind of shuck and jive and maybe this thing, whatever it is, I can get away from it. But if I'm in the soybean field, there's no juke and there's no escape.
Right.
It's gone. So I say, okay, that's not going to work. So I knew that if I got to Route 4, I had to turn left to go home. And the thing about it was, the corn did not run all the way up to Route 4. There's a little bit of a ditch, and then there was probably, I don't know, back then, probably 50 feet maybe of no corn because there's wildflowers, weeds, and stuff like that.
Okay.
There's probably about 50 feet before the actual corn started growing because the farmer probably couldn't get his equipment turned around in there. Mm-hmm. So I know that when I turn left, I'm going to intersect right into this thing.
Oh, boy.
So I decide I'm not doing that. So I'm going to go right. When I get to Route 4, I'm going to go right, and I'm going to go to my buddy's house. Now, my buddy's house is a good 200, 300 yards.
It's a long way.
It's a long ways. It could be a quarter mile.
No, it's not that.
All right.
It's
long enough.
Yeah, it's long enough.
It's long enough. But there was a different part of the equation I had to worry about because remember I told you about everybody that goes to Lake Erie travels this road?
Sure.
So there's constantly semis and cars zooming up and down this. So I'm going to have to try to time this up, hit Route 4 and get across the road and not get hit like the video game Frogger.
Sure.
And literally, so what I figured I was going to do is I needed to conserve my energy because earlier when I had taken off running really fast to try to get away from this thing, I kind of blew all my energy. You kind of,
sure.
And I was scared, so I kind of hyperventilated a little bit, like you get that. Yeah. And so I realized that I had to conserve what energy I had. Mm-hmm. And so from the half-mile mark to Route 4, I was just going to jog. and I was going to get over as far as I could away from the corn.
Right.
Okay. And I just jogged real easy looking at the corn, waiting for this thing to come out so I could, kind of juke it. But the plan was I was going to get to Route 4. And when I got to Route 4, I was going to take off like I was shot out of a cannon, turn right, cross Route 4, and get to my buddy's house. So as I'm getting closer to Route 4, I start building up a little bit of speed, right? And I can see to the right whether or not there's traffic coming because there's soybeans.
Sure.
But I couldn't get a great view of what's to the left because the corn is as tall as I am. Now, on down Route 4, there's a little bit of crest, so if there was a semi coming, I could see if the semi was coming, but if somebody in a smaller sedan, I might not have seen them.
Right.
And so I could have ran right out and just got blasted. So I couldn't go full speed and hit Route 4 because I had to make sure that I wasn't going to get hit by a car.
Right.
So as I'm coming, I'm looking. I see there's a semi, but I see it's pretty far down, and I know I'm going to be able to make it across without getting hit by the semi. And as I start getting to where I'm going to be the 50-foot mark where the corn's going to end, I tell myself, don't look. Don't look. Because for some reason in my mind, I thought that if I actually looked at and saw what was in the corn and it came out, that I might freeze up, And I thought, look, I can't outrun this thing. So the only way I'm going to beat it to my buddy's house is I've got to get as much of a lead as I can, and I got to time it perfectly. So I'm getting there, and when I get to the 50-foot mark, I'm about to take off. I do what I told myself I wasn't going to do, and I turned and I looked.
Uh-oh.
And as I turned, I saw it, and it steps out of the corn. And it was about 6 foot tall, and it was probably taller than that, but the way it was standing, the best way I could describe it at the time was it looked like the Egyptian god Anubis.
Wow. Okay.
Walks out of the corn. Its shoulders were rolled. Okay. So when it came out, its shoulders were rolled like this. And I don't know if your viewers can see what I'm doing, but
sure.
Its shoulders were rolled. Its head was up like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a great look at its face. And the first thing that went through my mind was, it's the Egyptian god Anubis.
Wow.
That's what it looked like. Its chest was really, this is the way I describe it. You know what a miniature dachshund looks like?
Sure.
A miniature dachshund has this really pronounced chest, okay? Like it's almost like a barrel chest, a dachshund.
Yep. Do I need to take my shirt off?
Yes, you do this. and so it looked like that kind of chest, okay? Like this barreled chest, and it was rolled forward, and it had these long arms that went skinnier arms. Like it wasn't like built, you know what I mean? Like the arms didn't look like some bodybuilder, professional football player's arms. They were leaner, and they were really long down to the knees. I couldn't see below its knees. Like people have asked me, well, was its legs bent backwards? I couldn't tell, because keep in mind there was 50 feet of wild grass, flowers, weeds, and stuff like that.
Sure.
It looked like I said, it looked like the Egyptian god Anubis. It had that canine head, and it turned its head. I'll never forget this. It comes out like this, and it turns its head, and it looks right at me. And I looked right at it.
Oh, no.
And right in my pants. No, it didn't do that. But I just take off. I just take off sprinting, just gunning it. And the whole time I'm sprinting to my buddy's house, I have this feeling that this thing had dropped to all fours and was chasing me, because the way it looked, the way its shoulders were rolled forward, it didn't look like it wanted to run bipedally. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Like I think it could ambulate bipedal. Because it was standing, it wasn't on all fours. But the way it just like from a kinesiology standpoint, you know what I'm saying? It looked like biomechanically, if it was going to run, that it was going to drop to all fours by the way its shoulders were forward. And the whole time I'm sprinting, I imagine this thing is lumping behind me, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer. So as I'm getting close to my buddy's house, they had a swimming pool, an in-ground, really nice in-ground swimming pool, and it was about 10 feet deep on the one end. And they had a chain link fence around it. And sometimes the gate to that chain link fence was open, and sometimes it was closed. And as I'm sprinting, I'm thinking to myself, I pray to God that gate is open.
Yeah.
I pray to God that gate's open. Because it came into the back of their house, and it was like a patio area. There's the in-ground pool, and there was a sliding glass door. And so my plan was I was going to run through the gate. I was going to rip that sliding glass door open because they never locked it, and I was going to slam it shut, and I was going to make it. As I'm getting closer, I see the gate shut.
Oh, no.
I knew I didn't have time to stop. You know how I'm going to show you like this. You know, like it has like a scallop-shaped locks, and so here it goes like, it's like one of these things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like to open the fence, you had to lift this thing like this.
Yep.
Okay. So I know I don't have time to stop and lift that thing and open the gate, run through, right? So in my haste, I think to myself, I'm jumping the fence. I'm just jumping the fence. Now the fence is about, 3.5, 4 feet high?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you can jump.
Okay.
But I'm scared. I'm jumping it.
Yeah.
I'm jumping it. Even if I have to Fallsbury flop it, I'm jumping it.
The kids don't know what the Fallsbury.
Fallsbury flop's the high jump guy.
Sure.
So anyway.
From the 40s. Or
Yeah, okay. So I'm sprinting. I know this thing's right behind me in my mind. I don't really know that.
So you're not hearing it right now?
No,
Okay.
no, I did not hear it behind me.
Okay.
But in my mind, it's right behind me.
Sure.
So as I get there, I jump up and I put my right hand on top of the fence and I throw my legs up like this to go over the fence. And the gosh dang fence was scalloped. You know how they have those points on
Peaks,
it?
yeah.
And it just shreds me across my side.
Oh.
And I land on my feet. And for some reason, my instinct was just dive in the pool.
Yeah.
Just dive in the pool. And so I dived head first into the pool, and my momentum takes me through the shallow. And when you get to the deep, it was like this really drop off. And so I get to the drop off of my stomach, and my chest slides down like this into the pool. I blow all my air out, and I hold my nose, and I sit on the bottom of the pool, and I look up. And I know when I look up, this thing's going to be standing on the side of the pool waiting for me.
Oh, jeez.
And I sat there for what seemed like a minute, even though I know it wasn't. There's no way I held my breath for a minute. And I sit there, and I'm looking around, and I got my eyes open, and I don't see it. And so I swim up. And by the way, trying to swim with a pair of running shoes on, not easy.
Yeah.
So I get to the surface, and I look, and I don't see it.
Oh,
I don't
thank
see
God.
it. So I get to the side of the pool. I crawl up on the side of the pool. I'm looking. I don't see it. And I sprint to the door, and I rip that sliding glass door open, and it had a curtain. They had curtains across it.
Sure.
And I rip that open, and there's my buddy sitting there watching the Playboy channel. So back then, this was before DirecTV and all that stuff.
With a big 15-foot dish.
His family had bought one of those satellites that literally looked like from the movie Contact.
Yeah.
It was so big.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, those satellite dishes in and of themselves may be the reason there is a hole in the veil. Just all those satellites.
That satellite dish was so big.
Yeah.
And so his parents were gone, and because they were gone, he had dialed up the Playboy channel. And so I ripped that door open, and he lets out a scream because he thinks his parents came home, looked through the window, and saw him watching the Playboy channel, and they ripped the door up in anger because they were ticked at him. He screams, I scream, I slam the door shut. There I am standing there, soaked, and he's like, what? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this woman taking her clothes off. And I'm like, whoa.
Totally forget about the dog.
Forget the dog. 30 minutes later, I tell him the story. No. So I tell him, dude, there's something out there. There's something after me. And he's like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm panicked, just panic stricken.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to tell him this story. There's something out there. There's something out there. I wouldn't tell him exactly what I saw. And this goes into the whole reason, one of the reasons why we started the podcast. So I look out the windows. We're going, because I'm not really telling him what I saw. And he's scared. I'm scared. We're looking out windows. And keep in mind, we live out in the country.
Yeah.
And he's got trees and shrubs. I mean, his garage was a detached garage, which was probably 100 feet away from the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm too scared to go outside. I'm like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving your house. I'm not doing it. Even if my parents would have came and picked me up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going outside.
Yeah.
Because it's out there. I know it's out there.
So this is the part that I always like to add, just to show how deep and meaningful our friendship is the next night we're only literally a mile and a half
away
south down the road, where our other buddy, and we'll just throw Phil Gebhardt, the infamous Phil Gebhardt.
Yeah.
We're at his house because all of us guys in high school, we were a bunch of heathens, so we were playing poker.
We like to get the other play
We like to get to play poker. We were the World Poker Tour before the World Poker
Right.
Tour. Yeah. So we're out in the garage playing poker, and he is telling the story to us. And
the very night after it
the
happened.
very night it'd be like the night, basically.
Yeah,
the same day.
Same day.
So he's telling the story, and the very reason he didn't ever want to tell what he saw was because as he's telling the story, the dudes are just we're just roasting it.
They're roasting.
Come on, dude. It's a deer. It's your imagination. You're making
Right.
making it up, whatever. And so he just like, man, well, what you asked us what we thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's just like, come on, it's nothing.
So keep in
It's
mind.
nothing.
Keep in mind, I never told them exactly what
Yeah,
I
never
saw
told, yeah.
because I knew they'd made fun of me.
Yeah.
They were making fun of me as it was. I
So-
mean, the whole time they're making fun of me.
So then I find out 30 years later that he sees this half man, half dog creature and lets us sit out in the garage playing cards all night. Doesn't even clue us in like, hey, let's go and play in the basement.
Maybe we
or in
should
the
take this
kitchen.
party inside.
Yeah, just let's also, because I think, as I remember, maybe that's why you didn't want to sit near the garage door. Probably you wanted to be.
Well, it's funny because we were playing in the garage, and I would not sit by the garage door.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
had to sit
So-
where I could get into the house, and
Yeah.
these guys.
So he didn't even tell us.
No, they
He didn't even tell us this stuff was
Had to wait for
I mean,
the small bits to get eaten first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
So, but what you have to understand is this: I didn't know what I saw
Yeah.
because there was no internet, there were no books on cryptozoology other than what we got from scholastic books about Sasquatch and the Loch Ness Monster. There was no frame of reference. This predates the Beast of Bray Road.
I mean, the
by-
weekly World News didn't even have
Right,
dog
yeah.
in it.
I mean, this thing predates Beast of Bray Road by 10 years or at least. And so I never once thought werewolf. And I know that sounds strange. And the reason why is because I grew up watching 8 All Night, like I said.
Sure. Yeah.
And werewolves,
And I just ate all night, but you.
yes, you did. And werewolves was Lon Chaney Jr. with this sort of flat human face, full of hair, wearing a flannel shirt and a ripped pair of jeans.
Yep. The Wolf Man.
That was the wolf man. That was the werewolf.
Yeah.
What I saw did not resemble a werewolf as Hollywood had portrayed it.
Right.
And so I didn't have a frame of reference for what I saw. The only thing that made any sense to me was it looked like the Egyptian god Anubis.
Right.
The same head, the same ears, the body type.
Mm-hmm.
That was my only reference. And the last thing I was going to do is tell a bunch of jackasses who I played cards with, oh, yeah, guess what I did? I ran into the Egyptian god Anubis.
But to be honest, okay, what would we even have done with that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
where we were in Ohio, or we are in Ohio, if he just said he saw Bigfoot, something that we were all familiar with,
Right.
and all were, wanted to believe was real, we'd have never even couldn't have wrapped our heads around that. And now Ohio's a hot spot for Bigfoot sightings.
Right.
You know, so there was just no way as high school kids,
right,
we could have even, and listen, that's a last, because we'd have never let him hear the end.
No, I'd have been roasted. I'd have been made fun of for years. So I didn't tell anybody.
I mean, anytime we've been talking to a girl, we'd have been like,
oh, hey,
Get her home before midnight.
You being the dog ain't free.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting about it is, so I had that experience and I didn't tell anybody. And then years later, I told Grover about it. And one of the reasons why we started the podcast in the first place was because I was too scared to come forward and tell people what I saw.
Yeah.
And now being a judge, being an elected official, me coming out and telling this story brings me no benefit.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
And I thought that if someone like me in the position that I hold, in a position of public trust, can come forward and say, this is what I experienced, this is what I saw, it would inspire other people out there to say, you know what, I've seen stuff or I've experienced stuff, and now I'm going to have the courage to come out and tell my story. Right. And we wanted to open up our podcast to people, especially people who had never told their story before, and wanted to come on in a form in which they wouldn't be judged. I only judge people professionally.
Yeah.
And give them a chance to tell their story, because it gave me a chance to tell my story going on a podcast. Because there's a lot of people out there who've either seen Bigfoot or Dogman or Ghost or aliens or anything out there that can't be explained, is scared to tell people because they're scared to be making fun of. And I remember, watching a Bigfoot show, and this guy was telling the story when he was like 16, 17 years old, and he never told anybody. And he says, well, I was scared people make fun of me. And I was sitting there watching, I go, amen, brother.
Yeah. Because
that's exactly why I did. You don't want to be ridiculed. Now, today, we live in a society now where people don't crucify you for saying these things because it's so commonplace now. And I think we talked about this when you were on our show. You turn on the Travel Channel 24/7, you either have ghosts or Bigfoot or something.
Yeah.
Monsters in America, Terror in the Woods, Ghost Hunters. I mean, you name it, it's on there. And the reason why those are on there is because there's a big enough audience thirsting for that subject matter. Yeah. So there's a more accepting audience out there to come forward and say, hey, I saw this. 30 years ago, Well,
when we first started, we started doing stuff on social media that we were going to do the podcast. I had people reach out to me from the community who you'd never thought these were the kind of, and some of them were parents of people that we grew up with.
Sure.
And, straight as an arrow, sober as that's a terrible
the sober as a judge of bigness and misnomer.
But you know what I'm saying? People that were serious, no nonsense. Yeah. And, and of course they were probably just like that because we were kids and that's how they wanted to be. But reaching out to me saying, hey, look, I got this story and I have never been able to tell anybody. Yep. But because now I know that you guys understand, or at least will listen, I want to tell you the story. And I've had
some crazy stuff.
Crazy stories, but they don't want to come on the podcast.
No, they
just want to talk to somebody about it and know that somebody will listen and, and
not laugh at them, not say, "Oh, are you sure you saw that?"
No. And then I think they enjoy the fact then that they can listen to our shows and talk and listen to us talk and interact with other people, and they feel comfortable then hearing the information from other people that kind of validates whatever their experience was. Sure. And some of them are pretty crazy.
Really crazy.
I mean, not everyone's adult,
right.
Adult. But we had a lady come on. It's been, I don't know, 5-6 episodes ago. She had a dogman experience in the early 70s in Southern Ohio. It was 48 years. She had never told anybody.
Never told him in 48 years.
And came on our show to tell, and we were the first people she told. Right. And she's just like, look, it feels so good.
It's a liberating feeling to get it off your chest.
It was such, and this This is one where the dog man was at the window of the car,
chasing their car, had a hold of the car.
was in their
Oh,
face.
God. Yeah.
And the bad thing is the person that was there was two couples that night.
Yeah.
The one guy she reached out to because she wanted to say, hey, look, I'm going on this podcast.
Yeah.
He denies it ever happened. He goes,
He didn't want anything to do.
I don't know what
Didn't
you're
want to
talking
talk
about.
about it.
Wow.
Didn't want to talk.
So even somebody
and this
who
lady
witnessed it.
Yeah, and this lady was 60-some years old.
Yeah.
She's 60-some years old and never told the story.
Yeah.
And she tells the story is very credible.
Yeah,
Very credible.
so even a person that was there and experienced it with her
Didn't want to talk about
would
it.
not validate their experience by even talking about it or saying, yeah, that's how I remember it.
Sure.
And how terrible is that?
Right.
Because that's got to be as traumatic as just about anything else.
Oh, her story was
Because you're getting-
equally.
You're getting
her
chased
story-
by a monster.
Oh, her story was equally as
Yeah.
scary as mine.
Yeah.
I mean, they were out on an
Well,
old.
don't give away the
Oh, yeah,
episode
sure.
when everybody.
Go listen to it. Go listen to her.
I do have to ask you though, because I find
Learn.
there's quite a bit of diversity.
So,
Just a sec, if you might, if you would. I gotta ask you, does she, at least can you tell us, does she explain the vision or the appearance to be very similar to what you saw? Because you do hear of the people seeing the jackal type, but then you hear of the people seeing the underworld werewolf hulking looking things, and there seems to be a real biodiversity there, and I don't know if they're just branches of the same tree or if they're just, that much biodiversity like there is in human beings. We have all different types of people and body shapes, and maybe it's the same for them, but
yeah.
what was her
Yeah,
take?
we talked about that. I think hers was very similar to what I saw.
Okay.
But yeah, along those lines, but you think about some of the people we've talked to about what Sasquatch looks like.
Yes, exactly.
And
Oh,
the
gosh,
the southern skunk ape in Florida, the Tennessee wild man, there clearly is a different diversity amongst these things that we universally call Sasquatch.
Right.
Different heights, different colors, different looks, different. So interesting along the Dogman story is, so for years, I tried to wrestle with, what would have happened if I would have turned left?
Yeah.
What would have happened if I turned up? And I was sitting on an airplane, and I don't know how exactly, I was reading one of Nick Redford's books. And this is a plug for Nick, I guess.
Sure.
But I was reading one of Nick
Because he needs it, right?
Yeah, because nobody buys his books, right? I bought 7 of them. But I'm reading one of Nick Redford's books, and this guy sat beside me, and when you're sitting on an airplane, you're sitting on top of each other.
Sure.
And he's kind of glancing over. If you're on an airplane, you look at what everybody else is reading.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
No, that's kind of creepy. But go
No,
ahead.
I remember like the guy who's got the Maxim magazine open, and he's got it full spread. And you're like, dude, man.
Maxim, people don't even know what magazines are.
Like, dude, hand me that magazine
Oh,
for the
yeah.
love of God. But anyways, so this guy's kind of checking out what I'm reading, and he kind of starts, hey, we start having this dialogue, and you're on a plane. So I break down and I tell him my Dogman story.
Mm-hmm.
And here he had been a hunter up in Minnesota and Canada and stuff like that, and actually had hunted wolves. And he goes, man, you're really lucky you didn't turn left.
Really?
I said, yeah, I'd have bisected right into the thing. He goes, oh, no. Because you don't get it. He goes, wolves are not solitary hunters.
Oh,
Because wolves never hunt by themselves. They hunt in packs.
that's a good point.
And the way they hunt
They
is
hurt
they
'em.
will drive the prey into a kill zone.
Mhm.
And what he told me was, a wolf will never attack something equally its size or bigger one-on-one because they're scared to get hurt. If they
Sure.
would get hurt, they can't run with the pack, they die.
Yeah. Good point.
So he said, look, this thing, now this is theory.
Sure.
He says this thing was, the reason why this thing did not come out and grab you, attack you, because you were almost 6 foot tall, 155 pounds. You were something that it interpreted could fight back, maybe injure it.
Yeah.
Terrible instinct on his part.
So anyway, so his theory was it was driving me to turn left, and then, and I remember this, right across the road was more corn. He thought this thing was driving me, and it was going to drive me right into 2 or 3 other ones, and it was going to be a kill zone. That's how they would have killed me. And I
Wow.
thought, God,
Now, So that is one theory.
Right, so that's one
Yeah.
theory. So for a while, I believed wholeheartedly that dogmen were biological creatures, that they, were a type of hybrid wolf or something, and they probably killed livestock and they lived off deer and blah, 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 blah. So lo and behold, we have Linda Gottfried on, who's the godmother of Dogman.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we start talking to her, and she throws us a curveball that we never saw coming, and it totally blew me away. And I had to rethink everything that I knew and believed. She believes that dogmen are not biological creatures, that they're supernatural creatures, and that they are associated with Indian burial grounds.
Yeah.
So she did she took a map of dogman sightings, took a map of Indian burial grounds, laid them on top of each other, and they matched up perfectly.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, man. And so I then decide, okay, I'm going to Google Indian burial grounds, Crawford County, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be damned. And within a quarter mile of where I first ran into the dogman is an Indian burial ground. There's two.
Well, there's one, and then now if everybody's been paying attention, remember the story I said where the lady got a hold of the judge through Shannon LeGros, and it was near the other Indian burial ground that's where this road tees in. This lady lived on the other side of the field there. There's an Indian burial ground in between where she would live and the road that.
And she had an experience at almost the exact same time frame that I did. There was something was creeping around her
so
house.
Keep in mind, we lived here the better part of over 40 years and never knew
there was an Indian burial
there
ground
was
there.
Indian burial mounds there. So like completely blew our mind.
Right. So then we had the lady on who had the dogman experience where it grabbed their car and stuff like that. And we asked her, by the way, is there having to be any Indian burial grounds in the area?
There's
yeah.
There's like an Indian. There's like a park.
There's like a park.
There's like a park
with
of
mounds.
Indian burial mounds.
So we have kind of
bring the kids.
Yeah,
bring the kids. Leave the kids.
Yes. So I've shifted my thought is that I think I'm in the camp of Linda Godfrey now, that these things are supernatural beings, although they have a corporal body.
Yeah.
But they are not of this plane.
And how fitting is it that it would be the Anubis visage then, because of Anubis being the god of the dead?
Well, and I talked to Wes Germer, and Wes told me that Dogman, Dogman, Anubis predates Egyptian culture. That goes all the way back to Mesopotamian culture, which predates Egyptian culture by thousands of years, and that the Egyptians borrowed the whole idea of Anubis from the Mesopotamians. And if you go back from an archaeological standpoint, Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization. That is where they believe life sprung up.
Right.
Is that between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers over there in the Middle East.
Wow.
And so, how about that? Indian burial grounds in Anubis, god of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I saw. But, back to what you were talking about, how people have seen these, like the underworld werewolf-looking thing. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. But I know what I saw.
Sure.
And the thing about it is I got a really, really good look at it too. The moon was enough. It was clear enough that night. I got a really good look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then being so adrenalized, I'm sure you were sucking in every bit of information possible, That's that survival instinct.
Now I don't think it actually chased me. I don't think it ever did pursue me. I mean, it would have caught me if it wanted to.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But
I don't think it actually did. And I don't know why. To this day, I still ponder why it just didn't come out of the corn and grab me, or what it was doing.
But if it's a supernatural being,
right?
It may not be there pursue you. Or it may be there just to drive you out of an area.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It's
and
like
not
it
to
just
really.
that's
yeah.
a really
It did a
common.
really good job.
It's really common with the Bigfoot too. I mean, they will do that exact thing. They will shadow people all the way out of an area they don't want them in. And so the curious thing is, I wonder if there's a burial ground right where you first saw it, and it was like getting you out of there. I don't know.
But it's close. I mean,
Yeah,
if,
it's real
if
close.
you go to where, and anybody wants to take a nightly tour of Temple Road, join the judge
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody wants to come.
for a small fee. No,
For a small fee.
Absolutely.
I'll do it for free.
There'll be no running.
Settle down, Jose.
There will be no running. But if you look at where I first encountered it, at where where Flickinger Road meets Temple Road, and you have the woods, you have the corner, it's close. That didn't
I
even.
mean, it's a couple hundred yards.
It's a couple hundred yards. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So it's almost like these things are out there and they're protecting these areas. And here I was. I think that it found it strange that I was out there at night.
Probably. Yeah.
And it kind of like was, what is this guy doing out here at night?
It's like it's like your buddy's watching the Playboy Channel. Why
Yeah,
aren't
what are you
over-
doing, man? The Playboy channel's on.
Why aren't you over there?
Yeah, so that's my Dogman story, and it forever changed my life. Because let me tell you something. Now that I know that that's real, what else is real?
Right. Well, you
You
know,
know what?
Vic Cundiff was on our show, and I'm sure he said it on his show a million times. You know, he believes that it sounds like, I should say, let me rephrase that. It sounds like Dogman likes to play. People have these memories of outrunning, this Dogman, but actually he's just keeping up. And if Dogman wanted to get you, Dogman to get you. So he's told it from that side. We've also talked to Linda Godfrey. She sent us pictures of Lee Hinkle's Hempel.
Yep.
Of his field where he dug a pit. He put a deer carcass down there on a rope or a chain or something like that. Ropes. And the only thing they got was like 3 misty pictures of something. And she sent those to Brent, and we looked at them, and Brent's like, that looks like Anubis's staff with the hook and the. Yeah. It was really interesting.
I'll send them to you. I'll send them to you guys. Yeah,
So,
it would look.
Yeah.
The thing that Linda talked about was the orbs. Seeing the orbs and all that kind of stuff. And the weird thing that she talked to us about was the disproportionate amount of people who've come in contact with these orbs who've developed cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she shared that she had she had a case where she had gotten cancer, and a number of people who had come into contact with these orbs also developed cancer. Now, look, anybody can get cancer, but when you look at statistically, there's a disproportionate amount of people who, for some reason, have come into contact with these orbs. And so the question is, what does Dogman have in connection with these orbs? Because if you go out to Bray Road, where Linda's done extensive work, she will tell you that they were sitting in a car one night and just watched this orb come right to the car.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and this is where all the Dogman sightings occur.
Now, to go to and this is just throwing this out there, and I think we may have even mentioned this, is a lot of people think the orbs are maybe the portals, or they're at least the mode of transportation for some of these beings or entities to travel into our world. And so we've kind of thrown it out there. Imagine the amount of energy that it would take to do that. So what if the byproduct of all that energy in the orbs as a mode of transportation, it's giving off some sort of radiation or something that you're absorbing in your body, and then.
Well, we had a paranormal investigator, a good friend of ours, Dan Pruitt, on the show several times, and one of his staple items that he brings on investigations is a radiation detector, because he's oftentimes looking for portals, and he says that the radiation detector is handy because if there is a portal opening, there should be a burst of gamma radiation coming through there. So you're right. I mean, that could be the correlation then.
That's the next level
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that it's, if you believe the eyewitness accounts, okay,
Mhm.
and these are credible people in the field, like Linda Gottfried and stuff like that. There is some causal connection or nexus between these sightings and these orbs. And you talk to Wes. Wes says the same thing about Sasquatch, Bigfoot. There is, for some reason, there's a connection between these orbs and Dogman and Sasquatch, which is weird
That is
because these
weird,
are totally different, subject matters.
Mhm.
And so,
Or are they?
or are they? But we do know this much, from the Bray Road experience. What Linda talks about is, eyewitnesses seeing these dogmen eating like dead carcasses on the side of a road.
Right.
Yeah.
So they,
So-
you're right.
So even though they're supernatural, they're still eating.
Mhm.
They're still. It's almost like, and I know we talk about this, that there is a dimensional plane that these things cross back and forth through, and whether these orbs of light is the
Vehicle.
vehicle which they they go back and forth. I don't know, but there's got to be something to this, because what are the odds? I mean, what are the
Right.
odds that you're seeing orbs contemporaneously with seeing Dogman?
Right.
Now, my experience, I did not see any orbs. So, but I may not have, because the Dogman was already there. It had
Right.
already
manifest.
traveled into our dimensional plane, and it was already there. So
There's a story from Skinwalker Ranch back in like 92, 93, 94, somewhere around there, where they are out there with like night vision binoculars, and they're up on this little bit of a ridge, and they're looking down, and there's two guys. One guy's got the night vision, and one guy's just out there watching. They're together. And I guess the guy looks up and he goes, "What is that?" And what had happened, what he had seen through the night vision, was this light just start to open, and then what he believes is two dogmen walk out. And one of them saw it. The one with the night vision saw it. The other one did not until he was given the night vision. And then it just went and went away. And nobody knows what happened from that point.
Wow.
wow. So you put us in the hot seat. I feel like you're the Grand Inquisitor here. This is the Spanish Inquisition.
Not the comfy pillows.
Don, get the thumb screws.
I got the boots of Spanish leather on. So tell
I
us.
just have English leather.
Yes, you wear brute in English leather. Trust me, I'm sitting beside him. I smell him. But I'm wearing Jovan Musk for Men. So.
Ooh.
Hey, it's getting too sexy up in here, guys.
I'm still wearing sage and black pepper, baby.
Cue the music. Cue the Barry White.
So give us your guys' take. What's your take? What is Dogman? Supernatural, not supernatural, biological creature? What's your guys' belief?
I personally, for me, I think it could very well be transdimensional. I'm not totally on the supernatural bridge, but it may, there's so many things that behave so oddly in terms of how we view reality. I mean, the aliens behave oddly. We think that they're organic beings, but they're walking through walls. They're dragging people through windows. They're doing all these things that are supernatural to us. But is it a technology? Is it an advancement? Is it some thing that they're capable of doing because they don't live perfectly in phase with our reality or something? So I tend to think that there's something that may be on our general neighborhood of reality, but they don't have to stay here. And as such, they can utilize that multidimensional nature in order to do things like disappear, to phase, to do, to perform these what we perceive to be these incredible magical feats, and it just may be more incumbent upon the nature of their reality, which we can't possibly understand. So that's I guess where I'm steering or leaning now. But again, this stuff is all so up in the air, and my opinion might change tomorrow. But Don, what do you think?
I'm the guy that's never had the experiences. Everybody knows that. So I'm kind of really skeptical.
Well, it doesn't count then. So
but I mean,
Thank you, Don.
I keep an open mind, and from what I'm understanding, it seems like they do have this supernatural component, whether it be Bigfoot or Dogman, because Bigfoot has been known to disappear, disapparate, if you will. Brent's read stories where they've just disappeared, missing 411 style, gone. Nobody knows where they went. So I mean, it's not hard for me to believe that they do have a supernatural component in the sense that they can traverse from one spot to another without actually physically crossing that plane. Like when you were saying, Judge, you were talking about how did you ever think how the dog man that was chasing you would cross the street to get you into the other cornfield?
No.
So there's an idea right there. If you had turned left, or if you turned right instead of left, could theoretically the dog man have, I don't know, wrapped you up, gotten you in his bubble, and boop, put you across the street, and then there's the other dogman waiting right there, So there's all these ideas. You talk about, you said you didn't see an orb. Okay, great, but that doesn't mean, like you said, that he didn't already manifest before he found you. But does that mean that he could instantly manifest and boop across the street into a gang of wolves? So just thoughts, but it's not beyond the pale to say there may be a supernatural link between Bigfoot and Dogman and all these cryptids and things that we find. I see it as possible.
Well, until we get a body, and some scientist gets to basically,
I don't think we're getting a Dogman body.
Well, I'm just saying, until we get a body and some scientist gets to dissect it and do a full autopsy on it, we're not going to know.
Yeah.
We're not going to know anyhow, because the government will do what the government does.
They'll take it. They'll get the body.
Well, so so while we're on the subject of the supernatural part of the Bigfoot and the Dogman, I'll relate to you guys a story that happened to all of us last summer. And so we don't go, look, we like to sit and talk about this stuff and theorize about it and talk to guests.
We're not field researchers.
We are not field researchers. Okay.
Trust me, I don't want to go out and have a dog meeting.
He's already done his research. But we're good friends with the guys that host a podcast called The Paranormal Road. And The Paranormal Road, these guys, David Hensley and Randy, they have a camper, pretty nice camper, at a campground outside of Oberlin, Ohio. And Oberlin, Ohio is up near Cleveland.
Sitting next to a national forest.
So they had told me that 2 years ago during the camping season, and so this is a campground with 150 campsites. I mean, it's a big campground. That people were hearing noises coming from the woods, like howls, like not a wolf, not a coyote, And so one night, 8 or 9 of them heard this howling.
Oh, 3 o'clock in the morning.
3 o'clock in the morning. So David was pretty sure what he thought it was. He finds one of the howls from the Sierra Sounds.
Oh.
And he sends it to everybody in the group that heard it, and they're all like,
doesn't tell them that this is from the Sierra Sound
in the 70s.
Right.
Okay. Sends it to them all, and they're all like, "Wow, how did you record that last night?" And he goes, "I didn't." They go, "Well, where did you get this?" And he goes, "It's from tells them it's from the 70s," and so they're blown away that now what they believe they heard was a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Okay. So they go through the rest of the summer. A lady who camps there all week long, which most people go on the weekends, but she stays she confides that, look, I hear that thing every night during the week.
Wow.
About 2 or 3 in the morning, my dog will not go outside after dark by itself to go to the bathroom. So the campground, the lady who manages the campground hears this scuttlebutt about there's a Bigfoot in the woods. She comes over and says, listen, you guys need to shut up about this. You know, I don't want to hear it. I don't believe in it. You know, so the camping season ends I think it must have been 2019. And then about February of 2020, the campground manager calls up David and says, you know what? I saw it.
Oh my God. Wow.
Her and her granddaughter were driving down the road around the corner. They see the thing. They take off after it down the farm. It's like down a farm lane. And it disappears. So she goes, I saw it. I can't deny it. So they go back to so this is all leading up to David and Randy wanting us, the whole From the Shadows podcast crew, to go up to the campground last summer with Amy Boo. I don't know if you guys know Amy Boo.
We know Amy.
Yeah, Amy's been on the show.
Yeah, so Amy's awesome. We love her. I've become good friends with her, and so Amy's going to come up too, and we're going to do this. We're going to do this episode outside in the campground, which turned out kind of cool. It was the light. It was at dark, and we had lights, and
then we're foolishly going to trample off into the dark.
Yeah. Well, so the idea was we were going to do the podcast, interview some people from the park or campground who had heard some stuff, and it was cool. It was like going and doing a live show, except I don't think we could sell any tickets. But thankfully, the people just came around and made it feel like we sold tickets.
Right.
So Amy Boo's going to lead us on this little expedition into the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like 15 people going.
Right.
Okay. So that's the only reason he would go.
Because I'm like, look,
there's
the
like
odds
15.
that we're going to run into a Bigfoot with 15 people tramping around. A couple people had a few drinks in them,
Yeah.
They were in something, and I'm safe. Dog man's not getting me. I got 15 people with me.
So we
let's give it a go.
So it's hotter than heck.
Oh.
It is so hot, and we proceed being led by two guys who. I've never been in this woods.
No,
we didn't even get into it during the daytime, so we have no frame of reference where anything's at. And these two guys are leading us. Father and son. Although that's a whole other podcast. Anyway, so they're leading us into this woods, and they're going to take us around, and so it's about 400 acres woods that we're going into, and this woods sits along a river that goes into the Cleveland Metro Park. Mm-hmm. So it's all like little spots of.
And it all connects up with Cuyahoga National Forest.
Yeah, Cuyahoga National Forest. So along this river, there's all these like spots of 1, 2, 3, 400 acre woods that are all protected. And
which, by the way, if you watch, Cuyahoga National Park is where the infamous Helltown is.
Bingo. Oh. Yeah. So we go out into this. We go out to the woods. Amy and maybe another person have like an infrared.
Yeah, they had the
infrared stuff, so we could see. And we're all kind of milling around. And these two guys, the father son, have kind of got off away from us. So we're in the middle of this woods. I know the campground is over my shoulder because you can kind of see the faint lights from the campground. And we're standing there, and just, some people aren't, because we don't think anything's going to happen. There's just too many people. And some people are just talking and chattering. And all of a sudden, I'm standing by Amy, and her infrared thing goes dead.
Ooh.
The battery's completely charged.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Boom, dead. And she's just like, man, that's weird. Okay.
Because these batteries were fresh new batteries.
These are brand new batteries. We haven't been in the woods for like 10 minutes, maybe 15, and completely dead. So now I don't proclaim to have a spidey sense, but I think I'm at least seen enough paranormal stuff and heard about it that I'm thinking, okay, this something may be going on. It's time to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm really doing is like, where are these two knuckleheads going? Can they get us back out of the woods before something really does?
Oh, these guys.
And So I look over where I think I see them with a flashlight. And I see, okay, I'm going to say it looks like there's 2 red lights. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking and I'm like, what the heck are those? So because I don't know exactly where we're at, I'm thinking, are those taillights from a farm or something that's beyond what I know where we're at?
And by the way, it's dark.
It's pitch black.
Like you can't see
it's
3
pitch,
feet in front of you.
It's really dark. And I'm like, man, I don't, and I'm looking and they're still there. These 2 red lights.
Oh no.
And so I go, Amy, do you see those? And she looks up and she goes, yes, I do. And I go, what are those? She goes, I have no idea. And boom, they go out.
Oh.
Okay. So Amy looks at me. So keep in mind, there's like 10 other people around us that have no idea.
Oh, they're just jackassing around too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, it's like being in a crowded bar.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
people they're just talking.
Yeah.
And this guy's flirting with this girl.
Yeah,
I mean, it literally was like I felt like I was a 16-year-old kid at a dance.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? The awkwardness and the weirdness.
Sure.
And so they're not really paying
They're not
attention.
Yeah. So me and Amy see these, and so we're like, okay, we need to walk over that way because now here comes, we can see the guys coming back, and I'm like, maybe they had red lights on something. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, guy, I finally get their attention. I said, do you have red lights on your hat or what? Nothing.
Oh no.
So Amy makes the decision because she's in charge.
And she's the field research expert.
Yes. She goes,
us.
let's go over that way. And I'm thinking, maybe there's there's reflectors
Sure.
on trees.
Right.
Okay. And these guys were hitting them, or I have no idea, because you're truly, the last thing you want to think is, I just saw 2 red eyes.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Because I'm just going to say it now in retrospect, if we've talked about, they were the same distance as what you would say something had that might be sporting a pair of red eyes.
Wow.
And so we walk over and we realize then that beyond where we saw these red lights, it goes up in the air. Like there's a slope. So it's not, if there was a field beyond that, I didn't see any taillights. Okay. We're not looking at the campground. There's no
rational explanation as to why there'd be
explanation.
lights or be red lights.
So now we got the infrared goes dead. We see these 2 red lights that disappear once Amy and I start talking about it and have seen them. And Amy, I think, is getting a little perplexed. And she goes, okay, let's just all stand still and be very quiet. And let's just see if we hear or see anything. Just let's all be quiet. Mm-hmm. So we all kind of spread out. And I'm out in front of everybody else. And I'm standing there, and it is so hot.
Oh.
My hat, I got to take my hat off. And I'm standing there, all of a sudden, I feel this, like it was like I was standing in a stream of cold air.
Mm.
Okay. So we're in the middle of this woods. There's no way there's a breeze coming through. And it is cold. It is cold. I work outside. I know what's hot and what's cold. Okay. This was really cold, and it's probably about 10, 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry, one of the other guys that does some stuff for the podcast, is within 10 feet of me. And I'm like, Jerry, you feel that? He's like, what? I go, the cold air that just rushed through here. And he goes, no.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay. I go back to Amy. I go, Amy, I think it's time to get out of here. I go, I just felt a big rush of cold air. I don't know what this is, but all of those things independently,
Mm-hmm.
you could all just say, I was seeing something. But you put those all together within
Right.
a 5-minute period,
Yeah.
and it just led me to believe that something was out there messing with
and
us.
the thing is, so some of the people in the group were really starting to annoy me. and I know we're lost.
And we're out of his county, so he can't do anything about it. He can't throw him in jail.
And I know we're lost because the guys that's supposed to be leading us
have no idea.
They're lost.
I don't know.
And I was getting really ticked. And the thing about it is, all of a sudden I started feeling sick. Like I literally just felt nauseous, like I was going to throw up. And I literally, and this is going to sound strange, I literally almost, and I've never had a panic attack in my life. Okay, I don't. And I literally started almost feeling like anxiety, like I had to get out of there. I had to get out of that woods.
Wow.
And I'm really irritated with these two guys because they got us lost. And then
The audience cannot even understand how irritating these guys were.
So
Bigfoot would have been a welcome. It was a welcome.
Yeah. So I'm standing probably a good 40, 50 feet away from the group.
Uh-huh.
And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, I smell what I can only describe as when I was a kid, we went fishing and caught a bunch of catfish.
Uh-huh.
Don't know why we brought them home. Don't know why I was a kid, right? And we left them in a bucket.
Sure. They don't keep real long that way.
They didn't keep real well. And so my dad opens that bucket and is like, oh my God. So he throws them in the field.
Okay.
Well, I had this beagle, and the beagle went out and he rolled in him.
Oh, yeah.
He loved it, and he rolled in him. And I remember sitting in the house, and the beagle comes in the house, and the smell of those fish on that dog was the most awful thing you could smell. And I smelled that.
Oh no.
That's what I smelled. And I looked at Amy Boo's husband was not that far from her boyfriend.
Oh, come on.
And I said, dude, did you smell that? Oh my God, what the? And he comes there and goes, no, I didn't smell. I'm like, let's get out of here. I said, I feel sick. I don't know what that smell is. So was there a Bigfoot out there? I'm not going to go out and say there was a Bigfoot out there. But when you look at all the different evidence, now in the law,
since then, this summer, since we went in July, okay, and there has been 3 more sightings of these red eyes.
Oh.
And David Hensley had famously said, I'm not going in the woods, because those guys are, they're mediums. That got them into the paranormal, as they're very psychic mediums, are intuitive and stuff.
Sure.
And which I wanted him to go out there because to see if they could, if we're talking paranormal aspect, maybe they could pick up on something.
Right.
So he went out with his family and his grandkids, and like 5 or 6 of them saw these red eyes together in one group. Then 2 different people, independent of each other, in the campground at different times saw, and nobody's saying, hey, we saw red eyes. They're saying, look, we saw 2 red lights.
Right.
Because nobody expects red eyes.
Right.
Yep.
And
so there is something, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, or whatever, there's something in those
some
woods.
Supernatural creature that's already. And the thing about it is, like I talk about the proof, and in the law, there's 2 types of evidence. There's direct evidence and there's circumstantial evidence. Mm-hmm. And when you're trying a jury trial, as a judge, I instruct people on the law, and the law says that you are allowed to consider circumstantial evidence just as strong, just as convincing as direct evidence. Mm-hmm. And you go out to this campground, there's enough circumstantial evidence when you put it all together to say there is something going on out there.
Yeah.
And what exactly it is, don't know, but there is something out there. So that is, other than my Dogman experience, that's the only other time I've been out and felt like there's something going on here. And let me tell you something. If I could have taken off running, I would have.
We had no idea where we
were
were
going.
We had
No
no
way.
idea where we were.
Lost. Oh, it sucked.
I mean, when that cold air hit me, that was like a smack to my face.
Because trust me,
Like-
he's been given a cold shoulder by a lot of women, and it smacked his face
Every day. Every day. What are you talking about?
since he was a kid.
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I mean, we don't, and Amy and I have talked about it a couple times, and we've talked about it on podcast. We don't have any idea what that was. But the crazy thing is, and I always feel like we give Wes so much free publicity. But the next week, because he needs it.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
yeah.
does.
This
He's
is-
hardly
this
making
show-
it. I heard he's hardly making it, guys.
This show's struggling. And I go back to Brent. It's because he doesn't do his own music. But anyway, there's only two podcasters in here that do their own music, and that's me and you. And
Amen, brother.
but he had a story on about somebody seeing the red eyes, and it's like that whole synchronicity thing. Like, okay, so
Yeah.
we experienced it, and just to make sure that I didn't forget about it, here comes a show talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, all right. Well, somebody wanted to remind me.
It's also, I was guest hosting on Bigfoot Odyssey one time, and I interviewed a man named Kevin Keeney, and I can't remember what is his actual group name or whatever is, but he basically investigates Bigfoot down in the Mogollon Ridge down there in Arizona, and he talks about that. And I got to tell you, I interviewed him a couple times, both on that same show, and weeks or months apart or whatever, but both times he talked about the red eyes. And the first time he brought it up, I gotta admit, I was just like, yeah, okay, they glowed, and because he said there's no light source, there's no fire, he's out there in the pitch blackness, and there the red eyes, they were just like lights looking at him. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I never shut the door completely, but, and even as a host, we got to get past our own personal paradigms and biases and such. And so I didn't know what to do with that. But then when I talked to him the next time, and in between that time, hearing from so many other people that are like, I don't know if it's bioluminescence, is there some energetic thing going on there or what? But man, there's a lot of people reporting these red eyes.
Well, I heard, gosh, and I'm going to butcher this, but like out in Oklahoma, they did the documentary. I think it was Oklahoma. They did the documentary on like the 100 acres or something where the guys went out and just time after time went out to this where they thought there was a family of Bigfoot living out there.
Okay.
The one guy had come up with, he believed that they can see, they almost have like infrared vision so they have night vision.
Right.
Okay. And that they don't understand that we don't have night vision.
Right.
So at night, if they could see us looking at them, they believe we can see them.
Right.
If that makes right? Because why would they expect that we
don't have that sort
that
of,
we don't have?
we can't see light in that spectrum.
And so the only way this guy figured he could get a good picture of or get some video was so he had a walking stick that he and the infrared camera pointed behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and I guess he managed to get a couple like video of the thing peeking out from behind the tree because it assumed because the person had its back to him, it couldn't see him.
Right.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And then when he would look on the he didn't move the camera, but when he would look, the thing would duck back behind the tree. And then when he would turn around, it would poke its head out. And because he had the camera facing behind him, so that kind of fed into his theory that they can see at night so well, whether it's night vision or whatever you want to call it, that they assume we can too, because we're supposed to be the king of the mountain here. And so I guess if you had night vision, your eyes might show up red.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or if you just wanted to mess with somebody, you would put in your red contacts and go out.
So I don't know whether you have time for what I consider the scariest story.
Absolutely. We got as much time as you guys want. I mean, we don't have to end at 9.
And to shift gears, because I know you have a diverse audience too.
Yeah.
But this is what I call my wind story.
Okay.
And this is scarier than my dogman experience.
Ooh. All right.
So I decided I had 2 kids. I still do have 2 kids.
Okay.
But they were
Glad to hear that.
Left him in the park.
They're all right. So my daughters, I have
They don't
2
claim
daughters.
him, but
They might claim me. So my youngest daughter was about 3 years old, and we had built this house out in the country, really across the field, about a mile from where my dogman experience was, in that same area. So I built this house, and we had lived there for a while. And one night, I'm putting my 3-year-old daughter to bed, and we still had a baby monitor in her room, and she starts calling for me, which she would do every once in a while. You know, I come in there, and she'd be like, "Dad, there's this little boy that's bothering me." And I'm thinking, little boy? Like,
Oh my God.
at preschool or church, or what do you mean? And she says, "No, he's over there." I mean, over there, like in the room. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, how's he bothering you? And she kept saying, he wants me to go outside. Now, mind you, it's winter.
Oh man.
I'm like, and this is the thing, you know, I grew up in a haunted house and all that kind of stuff. So my spider senses weren't going off, you know. I'm like, and so she starts telling me that there's a little boy and he's in the room and he's got blonde hair and he's wearing a pair of blue bib overalls. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking she's making this up because she doesn't want to go to bed. She's stalling.
Okay.
You know, I'm convinced she's stalling. And I said, well, what's his name? You know, because I'm going to play along, right? And she has this weird look on her face. And she says he says his name is Wind.
Wind.
I'm like, Wind? And now that caused me to like pause because I figured, you know, Tommy, Bobby, Jimmy, some kid's name.
Right.
And then suddenly you're mad that your name this whole time hasn't been like
And I think, why don't I change my name to Wind?
Wind. I mean,
That'd
that's
been a great name at a
great
bar.
name.
I tried to think of some girl.
What's
Hey,
your name? I'm the
Wind. And then it'd be like, good, blow right out of here. So that struck me as odd that she would pick a name Wind. So, but the thing is, she was distressed. And it didn't take me long to figure out she wasn't stalling. Like she didn't want to stall. Like she wanted to go to sleep. But this thing was bothering her. This little boy was bothering her. And she was distressed, like upset. And so I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know what I mean? So I finally get her calmed down. I'm in there for 45 minutes, get her to bed. Very next night, same thing. Dad, Wind is bothering me. How's he bothering me? He wants me to go outside. And I'm thinking, this is really bizarre. And the thing about it was, I could tell she was visibly upset that this thing was really honestly bothering her. And so I'm like, man, what is going on here? And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not sensing any supernatural entity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So part of me is thinking, is she just, you know, it's not your imaginary friend because this thing's not her friend.
Right.
This thing is really bothering her. So this goes on for a week. It goes on for a week. And she can't sleep. This thing's bothering her all night long. And which is bothering me all night long. Right now I'm a busy, you know, I was a private practice lawyer. I'm in court every day. I'm stressed out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every night I'm dealing half the night with this kid who's crying. I mean, she goes from from being distressed to crying that this thing will not leave her alone. And so finally I said, you understand you're not to go outside. No, Dad, I won't go outside. And we even had an alarm system on our house, security system, that if anybody tried to open the door without putting that code in, it would go off. And I start to think, man, I'm really getting worried. Something's going on. Like something's going on.
Right.
So this kept going on. And so finally, I told their mom at the time, I said, listen, her mom and dad lived in Findlay. I said, which is an hour or so away. I said, take the kids to your mom's for the weekend. Give her a rest from this thing. And I'll stay here and I'll kind of try to see if something happens, right? At about midnight that weekend, I get a call from their mom and she says, Wind is here.
Oh.
He's in Findlay. So now I'm like, okay, this isn't something that's like haunting the house. This thing is going and seeking her out.
Right.
So I actually broke down and talked to the pastor at the time. And I said, hey, can I talk to you about something? So I tell him the story. He kind of blows me off. Like, it's an imaginary friend. Kids make stuff up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nah.
Thanks for the help, buddy.
She's not making this up.
Yeah.
And now I don't believe this is a ghost. I believe this is something that's probably maybe borderline demonic that has attached itself to her and won't leave her. So this goes on for weeks, and it's getting worse. Like things aren't getting better; it's getting worse. And Wind is becoming more forceful and more demanding, and really bothering her. And so finally, one night, I'd gotten her to bed because we lived in a 2-story house at the time. Mm-hmm. I'd gotten her to bed. I went downstairs, came back up, and this was like a big 4-bedroom house. And when you got to the top of the stairs, you'd walk straight into her bedroom, or you turned right and walked into my bedroom. And so as I got ready to turn to go into my bedroom, out of the corner of my eye, I see a little boy, blonde hair, blue bibs, walk past me into my daughter's room.
Oh, no.
And I just freeze. I gotta be honest with you. And I know this is gonna sound weird, but I just simply froze. I literally, right where I was standing, just froze. And so I'm standing kind of in my doorway, and the baby monitor's on, and sure enough, my daughter starts talking to this thing. And there's this dialogue where my daughter is like scolding it, And then this is the part that'll freak you out. I hear this like language that I've never heard before.
Oh.
Now look, I can't speak French. And I can't speak Italian. I can't speak Russian. I can't speak Chinese.
Okay.
But if someone was speaking that language, I might be able to say, well, gee, that kind of sounds like German, or that kind of sounds like French. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But this was a dialect that was almost unearthly. Like it was not of this world.
That is creepy.
And you have no idea. And I think that it is Wind talking to my daughter in this language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to this through the baby monitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I realize it's my daughter talking in this language.
Oh.
Oh, you want to talk about like...
What do you do? Yeah.
You don't, I'm going to tell you, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You just stand there. You seem like an idiot.
Mm.
Like, you would think that, like in a movie, you would run into the room. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I didn't. I just stood there listening. And I know that maybe that sounds bad. Like, oh, gee, what a super dad that guy was. He just sat there and let this stuff go down. But I just listened. I just stood there, and it was her talking in this language. And then I hear her say in English, okay. It was kind of like if Grover and I was talking, and I said, are we going to go, or you're going to do that, okay? Like, you know what I mean? Like it was affirmative, like, okay,
Right.
all right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a pause, and she says it again, like, okay, like acknowledging, okay. So at this point, I run into the room then, right? Because I'm like, what is going on here? And she basically says, you know, wind's gone. Not going to bother me. But she's 3 years old. So I'm like, well, what did, and she did not know that she was talking in this other language. She had no idea. Oh. And I'm like, what did you say? What did you say? And she couldn't tell me. All she kept saying was, he's not going to bother me anymore.
Wow.
Fast forward, I don't know, 6 months.
Okay.
6 months. 6 months later, after church, me and some other parents and a bunch of kids go to the Chinese buffet. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they move all these tables together. And the adults are sitting on one end, and I'm sitting. I always sit with the kids because I want to make sure kids didn't cause any mischief, knock stuff over. Sure. And my daughter's only 3.5 years old, so, you know, I'm protected.
He's a helicopter parent.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at the very end of the table because I'm a big guy, and I'm not going to get sandwiched in between two kids, right? So I'm sitting at the end of the table, and my daughter's sitting right across the table from me in a booster seat. And there's little kids, they're talking and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, her head just jerks, like she just jerked her head and looked at something. And she says, I'm trying to remember exactly how she said. She says, "Wind, what are you doing here?" Oh, no. And I'm like, oh my God, no way.
For the Chinese food.
I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? This thing is freaking back.
Right.
Like, this thing's back. And then she's like, okay. And then she just goes right back to eating Chinese food. And I said, did you see wind? And she's like, yeah, but he's not going to bother me.
But he was just...
And so I'm like, well, what the hell is he doing here? Like what is going on? And like, I get emotional talking about it.
Right.
But so I'm like, what is going on here? So it was probably maybe a couple months later or something. I can't remember how long. Maybe it was a year. I don't know. But I was at my office, and because Yahoo was my screen page back then.
Okay.
So like Yahoo articles would pop up.
Sure.
And this article pops up about this 3-year-old kid, approximately 3-year-old kid in Toronto.
Yeah. I remember that.
Who lived in this apartment building downtown, and in the middle of the night, he got up, walked out of this apartment, rode the elevator all the way down to the front lobby in his pajamas, no shoes, no socks, walks out the front door, walks 3 blocks away from his house, and they find him froze to death in the park. And the security cameras, after the fact, see the whole thing. See the kid walk out, get in there, and the parents were distraught.
Yeah.
Because they said he would have never left that apartment without them He was a scaredy cat. He would have never done this.
Right.
And the first thing that went through my mind was wind.
Yeah. Yeah.
That this thing, either, I'm not saying it was wind,
Sure.
but it was wind or something like wind, convinced this kid who was about the same age as my daughter to follow him outside and let him off to a park and he froze to death.
Yeah.
And so I tell this story as a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your kids tell you that they see something or something's talking to them, you better damn well take them serious.
Listen, yeah.
Because there are things out there, I'm convinced now, there are things out there
Mm-hmm.
that are forces at play. That if you believe there's a God, then you have to believe that there's the antithesis of God. If you believe in angels, you have to believe in demons.
Yeah.
And that something was after my daughter, trying to get her to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
And if she'd went outside, it would have let her out into the woods. It was cold, she'd have died.
Yeah.
And so I tell people with young kids, listen to your kids, because if they tell you something's talking to them, don't write this off as an imaginary friend
Right.
or anything. I'm going to tell you something right now. The dog man was scary,
Mm-hmm.
but when it's messing with your kid and there's nothing you can do about it and you feel totally helpless, and then you go to your pastor and try to say, hey, is there something you can do here, man? And they blow you off, you feel 100% helpless.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the scariest thing in my life right there. And to this day, I have no idea what language my daughter was speaking.
That is really freaky and spooky and what a sobering thought. And you just want to know, for the parents that you read about, did they have a similar tale? Was there, because
Right.
I agree with you. I think there are things out there, and I think that parents do it with the best of intentions. No, it's just a dream. No, you're just imagining that because they don't want their children to be afraid. But if kids are responding in fear, you've gotta vet that. You've got to be a part of that discussion and let them tell you what they're experiencing, because for them it's real. Even if for you it's not, for them it's real. And sending them back to bed, to the place that's terrorizing them all alone, is about the most horrible thing you could do.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is, and I'm one of those guys that sort of like, the proverbial tuning fork
Sure.
to supernatural stuff. And I never felt anything.
Yeah.
Never had any, my spider senses never went up, never felt creeped out or nothing.
Mm.
And so you wrestle with this. Is this really she making this up? Is she not making it? But her demeanor told me she was not making this up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then I saw it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe this was a little boy.
No.
I believe that it came in the form of a little boy.
Right.
I mean, I've Googled and I've tried to research wind, like demonic names, wind, Indian spirits, wind, and I found nothing.
Sure.
To this day, I've drawn a blank as to, and why would it call itself wind?
Right. Well, there is that. Yeah. But I think that people misunderstand things like demons quite a bit. It's not Hollywood a lot of times. If it is truly a demon, my belief is they don't want you to know they're there. They don't want you to know they're part of the equation until they've established what they want to happen. When they've managed to attach completely to somebody or possess or do whatever. I mean, they don't broadcast themselves. They don't put clouds over your house or throw toys around to give you a fair warning. It's, for whatever reason, they seem to need us to subsist, and they don't want us getting an early advantage.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing is it was almost like, and I know this sounds weird, but almost like it could block off my ability to sense it.
Sure. Or, well,
like
do you think
to deflect my ability initially to get that spider sense, that
Sure.
sixth sense that something's wrong? Like it was able to block my ability to know it's there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's a different vibration than what you're used to picking up, though, too. Because,
It's true. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that a lot of those entities are incredibly potent, but they're a lower vibration, so maybe your barometer just isn't tuned to that. But I'm not, that means nothing here or there. But I'm just trying to think of why that didn't go off for you.
Right. And to this day, if there's anybody out there that you can reach us at From the Shadows
Yeah.
podcast at yahoo.com. I would love to hear your viewers' take on what language my daughter was speaking.
Yeah. It'd be neat to hear a sample of it, but I know you didn't record it, but yeah.
Oh man, what's the name of it? So I had heard, okay. What's the name of it?
We don't.
Gosh, I'm thinking. Do you remember, okay, do you remember there was a movie called, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about alien abduction.
Okay.
Okay. It was about alien abduction, and they recorded somebody talking,
The fourth kind.
and they came back and they said that it was Sumerian.
Yeah.
The fourth kind.
It was
Right.
it was a story from Alaska.
Yep. Nome, Alaska.
Right.
Yep.
The language sounded very similar to that.
Ah. Wow.
If now that's if in the movie what they were really playing in the audio was Sumerian. I know they said it was. I don't know.
How would you know what Sumerian?
But that's the point. It's a dead language. Nobody really knows what it sounded like.
That's true.
But it sounded like what in the movie, the fourth kind, that's what it sounded like. Not exactly, but that's kind of what it sounded like.
That is,
Like there was no.
that's incredible. But yeah, we'll certainly let you know if anybody pines in with their thoughts on that for sure. Hey, gentlemen, it's been a rocket ride for sure, but we actually made 2 hours. We're actually 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
Yeah, well, sorry for going over that story.
See, I mean, I got a ghost story, but after he tells his, it's kid stuff.
Well, that's just one of those stories, man.
it is very potent and it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And I actually like the connotation of it, of listening to the kids. To me, that's so important and it's so overlooked. I mean, I read thousands of stories and so many times I told my parents, they said it was just my imagination. It's like, oh God,
Well, that family in Toronto,
yeah,
even if that had happened, that's not making the news.
no.
How do you frame that in the article? And oh, by the way, the kid had been telling his parents for 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
The wind had been trying to get. You couldn't even put that in.
I don't know that anybody ever put that to newsprint.
Yeah, they wouldn't put it in there. And as a parent,
Are you going to tell people that now?
That for 2 weeks you didn't listen to your kid? So,
Oh yeah, my kid tried to warn me that this thing was bothering him, and I just ignored him, and now he's dead. Nobody's saying that.
What a heartbreaker. But gentlemen, It's been great. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. And thank you for having me on your show as well. I mean, I've just really enjoyed getting to know you guys and being a part of the experience and having this camaraderie. Thank you guys so much.
Hey,
thank you for inviting us on.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's anytime we can get our message out to people that, hey, come out, tell us your story, don't be afraid. There are things out there that lurk in the shadows, and if you're not afraid to come and tell them, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
So, and if any of your listeners have any questions about my Dogman experience or my daughter's wind experience, feel free to have them reach out to us, and I'll email them if they want, and and if they need be, I can give them a phone call if they really have anything really juicy that they want to tell me. So,
Cool.
but I love this subject matter. So
absolutely. And gentlemen, could you go over how is the best way to get in touch with you and follow up with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, the very best way is so on Facebook we have the From the Shadows podcast page, but the best page is the forum. It's called After the Shadows.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of listeners and stuff get on there and post a lot of cool cool articles and talk back and forth a little bit. But we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter and Facebook. We got our YouTube channel. So any of those ways that you can get a hold of, or you can find me, just Shane Grove, find my Facebook page, send me a message, and we can, if somebody wants to come on the show or tell a story, that's.
You can email us directly at From the Shadows podcast at Gmail.
Yeah,
Perfect.
the Gmail.
From the Shadows podcast at Gmail. If any of your listeners have any direct questions, they can email me. I'll check it. I check it daily,
Okay.
and I'll email them back if they have questions.
Well,
Yeah.
all right, gentlemen. Thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll have to do this again.
Sure.
Yeah, we can always kill 2 hours.
Well, and it was a great ride too. I mean, don't get me wrong. You guys made my job easy tonight, so that's awesome.
Well, we appreciate the invite, and we love having you on our show. So
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a great journey with us. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of it. You can always reach out to us here at the portal as well. We got a great network of shows now, lots of great resources between us. So we're all happy to help if any of you guys need it. So with that, Don, anything in closing?
No, not much other than Teespring, and there was something I was going to say, but I seem to have forgotten it, so
Okay.
It must not have been important.
All right. Gentlemen, if you guys would hold just a couple minutes after we close the show, I'll come back to you on Skype. But remember, all you guys, be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. I'll be back tomorrow night with the Night Terrors, so I hope you'll join me then. And Don, you'll be back on Saturday, right?
That's the plan.
All right, that's the plan. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, have a great night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Good night.
that's it. We'll find it in the live show.